Troy from Ace Appliance in Toledo, Ohio. Welcome back to another in-home diagnostic video brought to you by ApplianceVideo.com. Okay, today what we're looking at is a GE side-by-side refrigerator. Customer's situation was that we had a no cool in the fresh food section. Everything appeared to be fine in the freezer section. When I came out originally, what I found was that the evaporator fan, which is located up in the top of this unit, was not functioning. It wasn't spinning like it should be. You'll find that the fan sometimes is not on when it's in defrost or when it's actually to temperature, but for the most part it should be on. So what I did originally is I pulled the ice maker out, which has 2 screws. I pulled the cover off, which has another 2 screws, and when I pulled it out I could see the fan was there. I just touched the fan and it started to spin. What that tells me is that there's a situation or an issue either with the control board on this particular model or actually inside the actual motor setting of the fan. So we ordered the part, and now we're back with the part so we can get it installed. The customer did have a frosted over evaporator, which is something that you're going to see when you have a fan go out in the freezer section. That fan pulls the air across the evaporator and blows it into your freezer and into your refrigerator. So the fan's not moving, the evaporator is basically going to frost over. It's going to get all the warm air coming in is going to just stick right to it and turn to ice. When it turns to ice, the air can't move across it, even if the fan was to come back on. So today what we're doing is we're going to install the fan. We're going to take everything apart. We're going to also take the back panel off because I want to inspect the evaporator just to make sure that there is no frost buildup again and that it is functioning properly. So the first thing we have to do is remove the ice maker. The ice maker has 2 screws that hold it in place. You loosen them up, the ice maker will lift up and come right out. Once that's off, there's 2 more screws right here. I'm going to take those out and this whole back unit will come off for me. What you'll need for the repair for the evaporator fan motor on this GE refrigerator is your flashlight, a flat blade screwdriver, a 1/4" nut driver, and a Phillips head screwdriver. And I also use a small ratchet to be able to get into the tight spaces, especially if you don't have an extension for your drill. In this model, the ice maker does not only have the 2 on the top, it does have 1 on the bottom. So if you loosen the top screws and notice the ice maker is not falling out or coming to you, inspect around the bottom of it for an additional screw. With the ice maker removed, this unit basically has 2 screws at the bottom that you need to remove. Some units have more, some units have 4, 6. It all depends on what you're working on. So once I remove these 2 screws, I'll be able to remove this shelf because it's locked in place by the bracket, and I'll be able to remove the whole bracket unit. Okay, once I remove the cover and the bracket, which you'll be able to see the fan right up here, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to remove this shelf, and I'm going to get the brackets off that go up and down the side and the back panel off. Since I have to remove it all anyways, I'm going to take it all out. If you were not checking for frost on your evaporator, essentially what you're going to do is there's a few screws up here. You should be able to remove those screws and the whole plastic cover will come off. You may still have to take everything off to get to everything because it looks like there is a screw back here and a screw back here that needs to be removed. So now I'm going to proceed and remove the rest of the panels. Okay, once I've got the panels removed, you can actually see the evaporator is in very good shape. We don't have where it is too frosty. It's got a good frost pattern at the bottom. The customer had stated when we got here that the fan had been off, which is telling me that the unit was in defrost. That's probably why we don't have a complete frost pattern. All her food is frozen. She's got good ice production, so the freezer is getting cold enough. So I'm not concerned that the bottom is frosted over and the top is not. It most likely was just in a defrost for the customer. So now what I'm going to do is, in order to get to this fan, it looks as though this whole cover up here has to come off. So what I'm going to do is make sure I got all my plugs disconnected, make sure they're out of the way, all the ones that I can, and then I'm going to locate all my screws. Okay, and now after locating the screws, they're 1/4 inch. What I'm seeing is there's one back here in the back, and one back there in the back. So I have to remove all 4 of those. Now that I have the fan removed, this one essentially has clips on the sides that you pop the clips off, the fan will come off, and then you're going to reverse order and put it back together. So when you take this one off, you need to remember that you do have 2 little rubber grommets, one on the front, one on the back, that you do need to transfer to the new motor. Put your rubber grommets back on the front and on the back. Once you have them back in place, just observe your bracket, because the bracket pieces that come off, it actually screws in and catches on one side of it. And we want to make sure that's going to be your back side. You finish putting your clip back in place. Once the clip's back in place, the fan is back set in where it's supposed to be. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and reattach it back into the unit. You need to re-plug in the plug for the fan, and you need to reattach the ground screw. Get the plugs back on there. With this particular model, the evaporator is held in place by the bracket, the plastic bracket housing that holds the fan in place. So what you have to be mindful of and make sure that you're keeping the evaporator upright so it doesn't fall over and break any of your tubing down below. So now I'm going to go ahead and reposition this back in place, and I'm going to reattach the screw to get it held up there for me. Once you get the 2 screws holding the fan in place, once they're in place, you can then reposition your evaporator and reposition the plastic cover that holds everything in place to re-secure your 2 outside screws, and then continue with your reverse operation of putting the unit back together. So with this evaporator and bracket assembly, the metal frame has a lip at the top which slides in a channel in this plastic top cover. So you want to make sure you get it positioned in there. It can take you a couple minutes to do so, so just please be patient with yourself. Okay, so now once we have that repositioned in there how we want it, we're going to take our last 2 screws to hold it in place, and you got to lift the bracket up to where your screw holes are and reapply them in so it holds it in place. Now the fan blade, when you go to reattach the fan blade, you're going to want to pay attention to the metal retaining clip that is on the fan. That retaining clip, you want to know which position it was when you took it off. Typically it's going to be on the outside of the fan blade when you're reattaching it back to the motor. So make sure that that is on the outside. If not, your fan will be reversed, and when it spins, it's going to push air back down across your evaporator, not pull air up across it. and if it pushes it back down on it, you're going to have other issues with it freezing and frosting over and not cooling in either side, because it's going to be warming that as it's trying to cool. Once you get your fan back in place, you can test to make sure it's going to work by re-plugging in the plug that you had removed. Fan came on. I am going to remove those plugs I just plugged in for the simple fact that I need to put a couple pieces on before I have them plugged back in. Now this panel, the back panel, when you put it on, it has this notch out here. That's where one of those plugs goes. So you have to put the back panel on before you put your plug back in. It also has a ground strip right here. You'll see scratches on your back panel where your ground clip went. So you're just going to make sure that you reattach that ground clip, and also be careful when you're doing this part because you're going to be holding it and this metal can be sharp and you don't want to cut yourself. I'm going to reattach the side panels. They are notched for where they go. This top shelf that I'm putting back in, it does go in the top slots for the shelf on this particular model because it does help to hold the light cover in place. So just be mindful of that when you put it in place. And you do need to put it in first before you put your cover on, because if you do not, then it will not go in place. The ice maker plug is keyed. It only plugs in one specific way, so as you put it on, just make sure that the plugs are matching up right or it won't go into position. Once the ice maker is back in position, you don't have to worry about cycling it. Once the temperature reaches the proper temperature inside the refrigerator, inside the freezer, the ice maker will turn itself on and cycle how it should cycle. It may take a few hours, depending on how warm your freezer got. It could take up to the next day for it to start making ice again. So just be mindful of that as you're putting it together. Okay, so what that does now is concludes our repair. We've got everything put back in place. Now you just want to reposition your shelves how you had them. If your door shelves came off, reposition where they go as well and put it back together. Give it up to 24 hours to get back down to proper temperature, and you should be all taken care of. Thank you for watching another quality video brought to you by ApplianceVideo.com.